Tonight, lives torn apart. Two women speak out to encourage others to report perpetrators of domestic abuse.
Took her mind, her body and her soul, every part of her. She was never the same person again.
Also making the headlines, the biggest rail strike for a generation. Businesses and commuters are bracing themselves. ScotRail will run just 5 routes tomorrow.
In sport, he's a keeper. Alan McGregor signs a new deal at Rangers.
I closed my eyes.
And from Joseph to the Pharaoh, why any dream will do for Jason Donovan. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. Two women whose lives were torn apart by a serial domestic abuser are speaking out in the hope of encouraging others to report perpetrators to the police. Domestic abuse can be physical, sexual or coercive control. The behaviour can be insidious and often goes unreported.
Tonight, the perspective from both a survivor and a grieving mother on the devastating ripple effect such crimes have had on their whole families. Both women are now supporting each other as they prepare to return to court. They've been speaking to our chief reporter, Sharon Frew.
Lights have been placed around photographs in memory of the girl they lost.
We always called her Glitter Ball. Bernie was immaculate, she was glamorous. She went out the door with the makeup on, nails on, and when she was with him, she was downtrodden. She just wasn't her. Took her mind, her body and her soul, every part of her. She was never the same person again.
Bernie Ling died from a drug overdose. Her mother says her addiction and mental health spiralled after she was left destroyed by a violent relationship.
She always just said he's done bad things, and I can't tell you. And obviously when I read it, I was like, no wonder she never came back. No wonder. I don't think many people would have came back for that.
Earlier this year, Alexander Thompson was found guilty of raping Bernie and of her attempted murder after he put a plastic bag over her head as she slept and tried to choke her. Her family say they begged her to leave the relationship many times.
He had control of her phone, her money, her medication. He just had total control. And she wasn't that type of lassie. I'll never understand. I'll never understand what, it was like a spell he had on her. And we tried, believe me. I tried, her sister, her dad, we all tried to get her away. But she said, no, he'll kill me.
The 42-year-old was convicted of 17 charges of rape and violence against 4 women in West Lothian over a 6-year period. Laura first met Thompson, who was known as Ali, in 2016.
I stayed 3 nights. On the 3rd night, he had a knife to my throat. He would say things like, nobody wants you, you're ugly, so you're only going to have me. And when you're getting told these things repeatedly and repeatedly, you start to believe them. I thought I was a strong woman, I really did, until he got under my skin.
In the 7 months that followed, Laura said she became a shadow of herself as the control and the violence escalated.
In the end, I woke up in Falkirk General Hospital. Didn't have a clue what had happened. Had a big lump on my head where he hit me with a cup. When I got home to my house, it was wrecked. Radiator was off the wall, TV was smashed. The kids had to tell me what happened. To know that they witnessed it, that was the breaking point.
Police Scotland approached Laura after Bernie made an official statement, and because of this, she said she agreed to give evidence. Bernie and another of Thompson's victims died before the case came to trial. A detective from the Domestic Abuse Task Force read out the 2 women's statements in court.
She was Bernie that day, well, how many days she was in the dock, that woman, and she'd done amazing. So I was proud that my lassie's voice was listened to. And then when the court phoned me to tell me that he was found guilty on all the charges, what the woman said was, your daughter's voice was the biggest voice in that court. So that made me feel good.
The judge in this case is considering placing a lifelong restriction order on Thompson. He will be sentenced in August.
Every day I'm getting stronger. This has helped, and after the sentencing, definitely. He deserves a lifelong restriction order. He'll always act this way towards a female. He's not going to change. He's a monster, and he deserves to spend the rest of his life behind bars.
Laura says Bernie's story gave her the courage to speak out, courage she now hopes to give others. Sharon Frew, STV News.
And support is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on Scotland's Domestic Abuse Helpline. You can call 0800 027 1234 or the website on our screen.
Businesses and commuters are bracing themselves for a difficult week ahead as 3 days of rail strikes kick off tomorrow. Network Rail staff will walk out in a dispute over pay and staff cuts tomorrow, Thursday and Saturday after last-minute talks failed to find a resolution.
On strike days, just 5 services in central Scotland will be in operation and commuters are being told to expect travel chaos. Well, Caroline Lewis is in Central Station for us now. And Caroline, what's the latest?
Well, the talks have been going on right up to the wire to see if a solution can be found before the strikes went ahead. But RMT announced this afternoon that those last-ditch efforts had failed. This evening, however, it's quiet, but largely business as usual. But that'll be a very different picture in 24 hours' time, as at 6:30 tomorrow, the last trains of the day will be pulling out of the station. And that's just not bad news for commuters, but businesses as well.
The decorations are up and the stage is set for what should be a very busy weekend for this Edinburgh pub. But the rail strikes mean many won't be coming to celebrate.
We've had roughly 170 cancellations so far, and I think probably the impact we'll find later in the week as people come to terms with what the impact is on them, especially as it impacts on Pride. Highland Show just gets even worse.
And while footfall is down, costs are on the up as contingency plans are hurriedly put in place.
So far for the staff, they're finding difficulty in getting home, attending shifts in the first place. So we've booked accommodation for some of them, but that's not possible to do for absolutely everyone.
While only 3 days of industrial action is on the table at the moment, RMT have said there will be more if a deal can't be struck. And there's fears there could be serious ramifications for business.
This is going to be absolutely devastating for many who survived such a difficult period to be confronted with something like this, which will crash many businesses and events, I'm sure, in the coming months if it continues.
Just 5 rail services will be in operation on strike days, but disruption is expected every day over the next week. Some bus companies are bolstering services to get commuters from A to B. But with so many people shifting from rail to road, travellers are being told to expect congestion and, if possible, to work from home.
I think it's a decision for the person that's commuting or going to the place of business about how they want to deliver that, whether it's leaving early or adjusting their travel to later in the day to kind of offset that peak period. Our advice is always check in with Traffic Scotland for the real-time traffic and travel information.
So as the last commuters make their normal journey home this evening, it will be a very different picture in the days and possibly weeks ahead.
Well, this is set to be the biggest rail strike we've seen in almost 30 years, and it couldn't come at a more disruptive time, as at the end of next week signals the end of term for many pupils across Scotland. It also sees the return of the Highland Show, which hasn't been on since the pandemic began. The same goes for Glasgow Pride and Edinburgh Pride, which inevitably will be impacted by the lack of trains. It's now a waiting game to see what happens at the end of the week. Will we have a resolution, or is this going to be the start of more strikes ahead?
Caroline at Glasgow Central, thank you.
The SNP MP Amy Callaghan has apologised after she was featured in a leaked audio recording urging SNP colleagues to support the Glasgow North MP Patrick Grady. Mr Grady is suspended from Parliament for 2 days for breaking sexual misconduct rules.
Opposition parties are calling for the SNP's Westminster leader to resign over how he has handled the case. Live now to our Westminster correspondent Catherine Sampson. And Catherine, Ian Blackford hasn't broken his silence today, but Amy Callaghan has. What did she have to say?
Yes, on social media, Amy Callaghan said she wanted to issue really like a wholehearted apology. It's a very long statement. In it, she takes full accountability for any hurt and disappointment she has caused by being featured on that audio recording, calling for her colleagues to support Patrick Grady, but not mentioning support for the person who complained about Patrick Grady. Now, she says she thought she was in a situation at that meeting where her support for survivors was implied, and without that context, she can understand why people were upset. She also says the complainant, who was of course found to have been sexually harassed by Patrick Grady as a teenager, in her words, has been let down this week by my words and by my party, and she is calling for a root and branch review of procedure, something actually her colleague Joanna Cherry called for earlier. Now, in one quote, Amy Callaghan says, "As a party, we are clearly falling short in supporting complainants. There must be structures of support in place, first and foremost for survivors of harassment. Zero tolerance can't be a slogan, it has to be real." Now, I spoke to the complainant after this. He says he accepts this apology from Amy Callaghan. He says she has shown a great deal of courage in making it, and he hopes her other colleagues will follow her example. Now, Patrick Grady, of course, he had to apologise to the House of Commons last week, but after his suspension he will be able to return here from Wednesday. Ian Blackford, the SNP Westminster leader, is coming under increasing pressure to break his silence on the story. He was also featured on that leaked recording. We asked for an interview with him today, but we weren't granted one.
Catherine at Westminster, thank you.
A defence lawyer who is leaving the profession has told STV News the criminal justice system in Scotland is broken. Lindsay Barber says she made the decision to quit because the career no longer works financially or emotionally.
Solicitors are in a long-running dispute with the Scottish Government over legal aid fees, which they say are inadequate and have barely risen in decades. Here's our senior reporter, Gordon Cree.
Defending people in court is all Lindsay has ever wanted to do, but now she's walking away. She told me the system and those working in it are under unbearable pressure.
It's completely broken. Everybody's oversubscribed. There are literally not enough people to do the basic jobs, and we can't retain staff. Mental health for lawyers is the worst I've ever seen.
And she fears some may even take their own lives.
It's happening already. There are people trickling away, taking the most extreme actions, people who have years of experience, the top of their art form. They're walking away or doing the worst thing to themselves because they can't cope. The government knows that, the sheriffs know that, the court staff know that. We're expected to turn up and fight, but we can't. There are no resources for us.
When you see criminal cases being held in surroundings like this, with judges in their robes, it's easy to assume everyone involved in the law is financially well rewarded. But for a criminal defence solicitor doing a legal aid job, the fee is fixed. So if the case proves complex, the hourly rate can work out at the minimum wage. In the vast majority of criminal cases, defence solicitors are paid by legal aid. That's what allows someone accused of a crime to be represented in court.
It's never been an area of work that you would go into because you want to make loads of money. It's always something that people have done because they feel passionate about it, about access to justice. But it's gotten to a point where the disparity between what legal aid lawyers are paid and other public sector bodies are paid is just too great for people to ignore.
One of Scotland's most senior lawyers told me he worries about the consequences of all this.
I do have concerns about what we're going to see going forward. If we don't have a throughput of young, keen practitioners to let the profession flourish as time goes on, things are going to wither, and when things wither, then injustices will arise.
We asked for an interview with the Justice Secretary Keith Brown, but he wasn't made available. Gordon Cree, STV News, Edinburgh.
Conflict, violence, human rights violations and persecution, just some of the reasons which can force people from their home countries. Today marks World Refugee Day, created to recognise the strength and courage of those displaced and their right to seek safety.
STV News has been hearing from some refugees in Scotland about their lives here and the challenges they continue to face. Louise Hosey reports.
16-year-old Daniil is one of millions of Ukrainians forced to leave their country. He's now living in Scotland after fleeing his home in Kyiv with his mum, younger sister and their dog. The football-mad teenager has just started school in Aberdeen.
From one side, I want to study here. It's interesting for me. But from another, I miss my family and my friends and I want to return, so yeah. Now I'm studying and I try to make my football career. I try to make it here.
The number of worldwide refugees is currently more than 100 million, a record high. Recently, their plight has come into sharp focus after Russia's invasion of Ukraine led to tens of thousands of people seeking sanctuary in the UK. The Taliban's sudden return to power in Afghanistan last August also sparked a major refugee crisis. Charity worker Farzana arrived in Stornoway with a few of her family members last year. They were rescued from Kabul by her Scottish-based employers. Farzana has just started a new job with the Scottish Refugee Council in Glasgow.
I'm very grateful to Scottish people who accepted me as one of their own and gave me the opportunity to live here and settle well and be a better version of myself and use my skills and ability to support others.
Accommodation remains an issue for many refugees. Last week it emerged that at least 500 Ukrainians are still living in hotels in Scotland. A Freedom of Information request by STV News found the number of Afghan refugees in hotels in Edinburgh, Fife and Aberdeen totals around 300.
We want people to be right in the hearts of our communities. That's where integration happens. Integration happens within our communities, within our post offices, within our bus stops, not in a hotel room.
During a visit to meet Ukrainian students in Glasgow today, Scotland's Refugees Minister said tackling the hotels issue was a priority.
We're working day and night to make sure that we get the housing checks done, the disclosure checks done, the matching process happening as quickly as possible, because I want people out of hotels and into long-term accommodation as quickly as possible.
The UN says today serves to highlight the plight of all forcibly displaced people, including those asylum seekers who face being deported from Britain to Rwanda. The UK government says it's lawful, but refugee charities are calling for the plans to be halted.
We cannot be re-traumatising people. We need to make sure that people have a fair hearing on UK soil and that each case is looked at on its own merit.
Daniil, his mum Irina and his younger sister Maria are settling in well. Their father, who remains in Kyiv, is planning on visiting them shortly. Louise Hosey, STV News.
A life-enhancing service for people living with cancer is open once again after closing during the pandemic. The Beatson's Wellbeing Centre, based next to Glasgow's Galt Naval Hospital, provides therapies and treatments from massages to hair care. Sasha Spratt reports.
A small but significant moment. This is Glasgow's Beatson Wellbeing Centre reopening once again. Like many health services, the hub was closed during the pandemic. For people living with cancer, the therapies offered here can be life-changing.
This is the first time I've been here this morning and I'm absolutely overwhelmed with the facility. It's absolutely stunning. It definitely highlights all the things that you take for granted, from cutting your own fingernails to your toenails, and that there's people here that can do that for you and enjoy doing that for you, the staff. It's just a marvellous feeling that you're not being a burden. This afternoon I'm getting my toes done, so I'm looking forward to that. A wee bit of paint on my toenails maybe.
As many services as possible were offered online, but massages, hair treatments and other close contact therapies have been closed until now. At its busiest, up to 400 people come through these doors each week.
The face-to-face and the personal contact is amazing. We were very surprised with the wonderful feedback that we've had from our virtual sessions, and actually it's something that we will definitely continue. It's been something that patients who live far away and family members can access, and for those that are maybe feeling very unwell or extremely fatigued, it's been very positive that they can still access the service from the comfort of their own home.
We are working towards opening for outpatients, but we just don't have a date yet.
For now, only inpatient care is being offered, with the hope of starting outpatient services in the coming weeks. Sasha Spratt, STV News.
I'm Matt here with the sport. We're bailing into the close season and already plans for the new season.
Always the case, isn't it, John? We've got some news coming up from Ibrox.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Good evening. Alan McGregor has extended his contract at Rangers to remain at the club for another year. The goalkeeper, whose previous deal ended last month, says he's delighted to stay on. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst says the 40-year-old brings invaluable experience and leadership both on and off the pitch. News from St Mirren, and manager Stephen Robinson says he's added pace and energy to his team, but admits he's aiming to make more signings. The Buddies have recruited 5 players in the summer, with Australian Ryan Strain set to become their 6th addition. Day 1 of pre-season training. Stephen Robinson addressing his players ahead of a new campaign, and the manager's aspirations are clear.
I think first and foremost, make sure you're in the division. I always said that in any job that I have, and then you build from there. As I say, we're trying to put things in place that make it more achievable to get into the top 6. I imagine every club in the division is trying to do that, so we have to aim there. We have to aim to try and get there. It's yet to be done, but we're putting, as I say, the building blocks.
After being appointed manager in February, Robinson is now stamping his mark on the team. A deal to sign wing-back Ryan Strain from Maccabi Haifa is close to being completed. He would become the club's 6th summer signing, joining Toyosi Olasanya, Jonah Ayunga, Keanu Bacchus, Trevor Carson and Mark O'Hara at the Buddies.
I felt that the squad needed some more pace and energy into it, as every squad does, a freshness at the start of the season. So I feel we've managed to do that so far, and we've retained the boys we want there. We've still got a couple of offers into other players as well that were here previously. So, the squad's still building, but as you said, important to put my own stamp on it now as well.
Obviously, I worked with the manager before. I know quite a lot of the boys and got a really good feeling about the place this year, so I'm delighted to be here. I feel now I'm at an age, you say, I'm 26 now. It's really important to me to really grab games by the scruff of the neck and show what I can do.
While Robinson rebuilds on the pitch, off it, the club's new chief operating officer wants St Mirren to be integral to the community.
To me, this football club has got to be about the good that this club can be, particularly in the kind of cost of living crisis that we're going through at the moment. There's people in our local area that are struggling. We've got to do our bit to try and help that as much as we can.
Like what?
Well, I think we've got to connect with them first and foremost. We've got to get out into the community. We've got to try and get out and help local charities as much as we can. Not just this one, but all football clubs, I think, have got a place in society to really be a force for good and help their people, essentially, as much as we can. And as I said, for me here, having grown up in the local area, I just know how much this place means to so many people.
Rugby, and Matt Curry says he wants to grasp his opportunity with Scotland after being called up for the summer tour. The 21-year-old centre was selected by Gregor Townsend after a breakthrough season with Edinburgh, and Curry could be in line to feature in this weekend's fixture against Chile in Santiago.
It's massive. It's an opportunity I'm really excited for and really grateful for at the same time. I think the opportunity to travel with this group of boys, the fun we have, they're a great group. And just learn from it. There's some great players in here, so it's a great opportunity for myself. But also, if the opportunity comes to play for my country, that's pretty massive for me and my family.
And just got time to give you some more football news. It's come in from Kilmarnock. They have signed goalkeeper Zach Hemming on loan from Middlesbrough for a 2nd season. And that is all the sport for me tonight, folks.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Now, Sean, how's the weather forecast for the longest day of the year?
A light drizzle is coming in from the west. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
Well, what a delightful day it's been out there today. That lovely sunshine, temperatures into low 20s, and this bubble of warm air heading our way for Wednesday and Thursday could boost the temperatures in some areas higher than they've been today, especially the likes of Stirling, Falkirk, Grangemouth, West Lothian, western parts of Fife. Top temperatures could be heading for around 23 to 24 degrees for a time on Thursday. So solstice sunrise tomorrow, no point getting up for many of us because we've got more clouds spreading back in from the north through tonight, along with some outbreaks of rain, turning particularly misty across Argyll, Arran, Kintyre as we move through the night and staying that way into tomorrow here. That's where we'll hang on to the thickest cloud. Elsewhere, a lot more cloud around than today, but it will break up to give us some brief sunny spells, especially across central and southern areas. And in that sunshine, again, still feeling warm, 19 to 20 degrees. Of course, remember, the UV levels don't get any higher during the solstice and the weeks either side. So any sunshine now is extremely strong. I need your suntan lotion on, despite the fact we have more cloud around. Then on Wednesday, we still hang on to the thickest cloud in western parts, best of any sunny spells further east. Temperatures about 17 to 19 degrees. But as I said, they will peak probably on Thursday. Generally, I'm going for around 18 or 19 degrees, but into the low to mid-20s further east, turning fresher once again as we head into the weekend. Bye-bye.
TUI Blue Hotels. Sponsor STV Weather.
And finally, Jason Donovan has returned to the stage in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at Glasgow's King's Theatre, a show in which he played the lead back in 1991.
Well, now he's passing on the mantle to fellow actor Jack Yarrow while he plays Pharaoh. Our reporter Laura Boyd chatted to them both about the show and how Jason feels about saying a final farewell to neighbours.
I closed my eyes.
Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat is a show filled with songs we all know and love, and nobody knows it better than Jason Donovan, who starred in the West End production over 30 years ago. Now back, this time he's playing Pharaoh.
The bonus for me is that I only do 15 minutes and I come out of Act 2, you know, and I make it the best 15 minutes I can. This is the man that's working hard, you know, and he smashes it, and we're a great team.
It'll be interesting to see how our audiences in Scotland react to the show in comparison to the other cities that we've been in. But no, I'm really excited to be here. Yeah.
I like the West End in Glasgow. I mean, I'm a massive, fan of Edinburgh. My son's studying in Edinburgh.
And while Jason may be on stage with Joseph in both these cities, he's also about to be back on our screens in the final ever episode of Neighbours.
Well, look, I'm not going to give anything away, unfortunately. You'll have to watch and see, really. I think it's sad, obviously, that the show is finishing, but I think it's also time to celebrate.
Do you know, I've never seen Neighbours.
Haven't you? Jack, what are you doing?
I know. Why did you put me on
now? I think less of you.
But no, maybe I think I need to binge watch Neighbours now that it's
37 years. Yeah, that'll be a long watch.
Before he attempts that, catch Jack and Jason at Glasgow's King's Theatre till the 25th of June. Laura Boyd, STV News.
There was a wee twinkle in your eye there, Kellyanne, when I spoke about Jason Donovan.
I'm saying nothing, but yeah, I did quite like Jason Donovan, yeah. But anyway, John, I'm thinking about the Technicoloured Dreamcoat. Is that where you get the inspiration for those ties you're wearing?
Tonight, I think you're right. You could be onto something there. I think you're right. Good night.
Good night.